Today I'd like to make a quick, simple video to try to help out anyone who is new to stacking or is considering starting stacking. This video here will be my top 5 tips on things you should consider before you start stacking. If this sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another video from Budget Bullion Stacker, the channel that takes a budget-minded approach to the stacking of precious metals. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and ring the bell notification so you'll be alerted when new videos are dropped. And if you wouldn't mind, please give the videos a thumbs up, maybe leave a comment down below. It helps the channel out more than you know. With my top 5 tips, I'd like to start out with asking yourself the very first question: what do you want to stack? I think this is one of the most important things to consider when you're starting stacking, or if you're thinking of starting to stack. As you can see here, I've chosen to mainly focus on silver. I'm hoping to incorporate some gold this year, but my decision was I decided I wanted to stack silver mostly. Once you make that decision, whether you want to stack silver, gold, platinum, palladium, rhodium, that also will immediately roll into what kind of stacker do you want to be. Do you want to be a prepper stacker? Do you think the economy is just going to collapse and you're going to be using silver and stuff like this as a currency to barter with and purchase goods? Do you want to be a retirement stacker, which is more what I consider myself? Is this a long-term saving plan for you? There's many different kinds of stacking. We can get into that into another video. But you'll need to determine which one you feel is right for you. I tried to lay out here many things, when I was talking about the different types of stackers. Do you want to be a collector stacker? A lot of people are collecting the World of Dragons coins. A lot of people are collecting the Queen's Beasts, stuff like that. Collections are really nice, but I consider those to be different than most of the rest of what you see. If you're a prepper stacker, you might really look highly into your, constitutional silver. It's a great option. If you're stacking on a really tight budget, you might want to look into buying your generics. Buy your generic silver rounds and bars. Be very careful on these fractional pieces. Usually the premiums are kind of high. So I don't have very much fractional silver. Those premiums are why I stay away from it. Following with higher premiums, poured silver. Poured silver premiums are quite a bit more expensive, so keep that in mind. These are really cool pieces. There's a lot of really nice poured artists out there, and they make awesome stuff, but you're going to pay more for it. So you might be able to get maybe 1.5 or 2 of these for one of these. So that starts to add up over time. Also, do you want to be like a numismatic or semi-numismatic stacker? You start getting into slabbed and graded stuff like this. These are also going to carry a premium. Then your semi-numismatic, you've got limited run stuff. And then you've got stuff that's a little bit older that's getting more rare. So, things to consider. Also, do you want to stack foreign silver? Some people shy away from it. They're like, oh, I want my United States 90% constitutional. Some people won't even fool with the 40%. I have absolutely nothing wrong with stacking some foreign silver. Yeah, it's not the same purity. I think these right here are about 50%. This one's 90. This one here, I'm not sure, I think maybe 80%. This is still about 0.6 of an ounce of silver. You got a nice little 1/2 ounce piece of silver from Australia. These are wonderful things to stack. Most people steer people into coins. So you have your government minted bullion here. Try to put dead center what everyone considers to be the king of all the coins you can stack, the American Silver Eagle. But I tried to flank it with 2 of my favorites, the Canadian Maple Leaf and the British Britannia. You have to make these determinations for yourself. Everyone's going to be different. As you can see, my stack's a little bit odd. I've chose to have a little bit of collecting, a little bit of government minted bullion, a little bit of semi-numismatic and numismatic, a little bit of poured silver. I just tried to get a little bit of everything. So, to me, I kind of consider it a well-rounded stack. Some people think it's chaos. It's just a strategy I like. Of course, a lot of this stuff I've gotten from winning silver in the community too. So, again, if someone's going to give you free silver, it doesn't matter if it falls into your stacking strategy or not. Free silver is free silver. Stack it away. Now, once you've determined these two things, you'll have to really, really chew on this one long and hard. And this is going to be slightly different for every single person, but get out of high interest debt. Now, granted, things like credit cards and stuff are kind of a no-brainer. If you've got $4,000 or $5,000 racked up on a credit card and they're charging you 15, 18+% interest, you should probably take all the money that you would be funneling into precious metals and divert those funds over, pay off that high interest credit card before you even consider stacking this. Again, this is a long-term savings for me. So if I had high interest credit card bills piling up, then I'm not only taking away from money that I could be stacking, but I might end up actually having to liquidate some of these to pay off that credit card. So please think about that one long and hard. Pay off the credit card before you start. Now, there's other types of debt. You could have a car payment. Probably best to pay it off if you can, but it depends. Everyone, like I said, everyone's in a different situation. You have to make these determining factors. You have to make the judgments for yourself. Another thing, do you rent a home or have you purchased a home? If you're a home owner, you may not be able to pay off your mortgage. A lot of times, it's a 20, 30-year mortgage. Some people are in a nice fixed 15-year mortgage, but your payment's going to be higher. So again, you have to weigh all these factors out before you actually start flowing from one into another. After you have done that, I would actually say your number 4 priority would be to have an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund will be different from person to person, from situation to situation. I was talking about whether you rent or own a home. That's a perfect example to explain this. If you rent and there's an emergency home repair, that falls back on the landlord, the owner of the property. If you own your home, those repairs fall back on you as the owner of the property. So I like to tell people, if you own a home, especially if you own a home, have between $7,000 and $10,000 in the bank. At least that in your bank account. And I give that number for a very specific reason. If your HVAC system goes out, even a cheap unit, it's going to run you between $4,000 and $5,000. Can be more. It just depends on the size of your home, how big of a unit you need. But even if you have a smaller house, you can rack up, at least a $4,000 bill in a hurry if your HVAC unit goes out and has to be replaced. Same thing can be said for the roof on your home. If your roof is bad, it needs to be replaced. If you're having to borrow money to pay for these repairs, you could be falling back into the high interest rates that we were trying to avoid to begin with. So try to keep things like this in mind. Emergency repairs are going to happen. Now, transversely, you might not need as much if you're renting a house, but think again, what happens if the transmission goes out in your car? That's probably $2,500, $3,000, maybe $4,000 right there. So again, I think that $7,000 to $10,000 range is probably about what I would consider the sweet spot or the bare minimum that you should probably consider having in the bank before you even start. And I would also recommend, if possible, to have $1,000 or $2,000 set aside. Lock it up in your safe. Hopefully you've got something fireproof. I like to use a 3-layer fireproofing method. But, have some type of cash locked away at home. If something happens the banks are shut down, you need money and you need it now, you might not be able to run to the bank or the ATM and draw out those type of funds. A lot of people have daily limits on their credit cards or their bank cards, debit cards, where you can only draw out so much. If you have a limit like that in place, it's great to prevent fraud, but you know, you're going to have a really, really hard time accessing large amounts of cash if you need so. You know, I couldn't use my ATM card and go draw out $1,000 or $1,500. My card just won't allow it. It's just a safety feature I have in place. So, you know, many, many different factors to consider on this. And then your number 5 is determine your budget and stick to it. Now, as you see, I decided I wanted to start stacking silver. I do plan to stack some gold this year. It won't be a tremendous amount, but I do have a separate, I guess, pool of money. You know, I have another side income that's coming in. It's not a great deal, but I do plan to set it aside and just let it pile up. And then when I've got enough money, I'll go purchase, say, a 1/4 ounce of gold. But it's very, very tempting to see a lot of really great deals. You know, Black Friday rolled around. There were some really good deals going on, but it just wasn't in my budget at the time. So I just kind of had to walk on some of those really great deals. So I would highly recommend that, you know, you determine your budget. You know, you're going to spend, you know, $20 a month, you know, $50 a month, $100 a month. Maybe it's $500 a month. It doesn't matter how big that budget is, but understand what that budget is. Make sure that if you can only budget $100 a month to purchase silver, that when a great deal comes along, you don't start to cripple yourself by like, oh, I've got to buy this deal, so you'll go drop $250. Well, that's out of your budget. You know, that's just not a smart thing to do, in my honest opinion. When you're determining your budget on how much you can afford to spend, another major thing that I'll caution people is never use credit to purchase your silver. That ties back into getting out of the high interest debt. You know, you don't want to be piling up money that you can't necessarily afford, throwing it down on more silver because you think silver's going to spike. It doesn't do you any good if the silver spikes. If you can't pay your bills, keep the lights on, keep food in your fridge and a roof over your head, you're going to have to sell your silver. If you're fortunate and silver spiked, you might break even or turn a little bit of profit. You could actually lose money. So be very cautious. I do use credit cards sometimes to pay for silver, but if you do that, make sure that you can afford to pay the bill off as soon as it comes in. That way you're not accruing all the high interest rates. That would be a very, very sad thing to see someone buy a bunch of silver on a credit card, not be able to pay it off, and then you basically have to liquidate it all and lose what you're working hard for. So I will throw one wild card in here. We'll call it number 6, but you know, I've always liked the expression, don't put all your eggs into one basket. So the reason that I throw this in here as a wild card is, you know, most of the experts recommend to only put like a maximum of 10% of your wealth into precious metals. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell anyone what to do with your money. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. That's not what this video is about. This is just to get people thinking, considering things, maybe get some things lined up to be in a better place to stack. But the wild card would also be the don't put all your eggs in one basket. So maybe have a plan to invest in other things aside from just the precious metal you've determined. Maybe diversify your stack, like I'm trying to move into a little bit of gold here in 2020. That could be one way to diversify what you want to get into. But also maybe look at the stock market. I understand it's like absolute blasphemy. Don't freak out on me. There's some really good dividend paying stocks out there. Again, do your own research. If you feel they're right for you, get some. I understand the markets haven't been doing the greatest here as of late, but do your research, see how the market's trending, see how things are doing. Everything's a risk. I'm looking at this as a long-term savings. I'm hoping that silver will at least retain its value until I reach retirement age. Silver could decrease. I could be losing money by the time I retire. That's a gamble that I'm taking, but I'm also only putting a small amount of my budget into precious metals. I probably have one of the tightest budgets in the community. I won't say the tightest because I don't know everyone's situation, but I don't spend a whole lot of, my paycheck on precious metals. I set just a small amount aside. So again, I please encourage everyone, do your research, maybe consider some of these things before you actually take that first step and take that big leap into the stacking world. If you have things squared away in order, chances are going to be much higher that you won't actually have to sell off part of your stack. You won't have to get rid of it, which kind of defeats the purpose of stacking in the first place. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the video. If there's anything that you all think should have been included in the list, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm not an easily offended person. I think we're all here to help one another, so if you have really valid points, leave them down in the comments. Maybe we can do a revised version of this video as a collective, and maybe come out with, like, if we get all the stackers together and put our heads together, maybe we can come out with like a definitive top 10 list for the stacking community on things you should consider before stacking. This was just the top 5 that came into my mind. So again, folks, as I like to always tell people, everyone is stacking on a budget. It doesn't matter how big the budget you have to stack with is, as long as you keep on stacking.